podcast. We are super excited to be here. I have no clue. I think I might be trying to figure out how to live stream this. We're going to see if it does it. I don't know. I really don't. Um,
It's always a crapshoot.
always a crapshoot. Well, I thought I'd undid it so that it wouldn't do this anymore. And we agreed to just upload it afterwards. But hey, everyone. Like I said, welcome back. It's Sunshine, your host. And I am joined here by the amazing Daniel. I call him Dan, but you always write your name as Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because when people ask me what my name is, I say it's Dan, and then they go Stan. So I put Dan. That takes the guesswork out of it.
Well, we are excited to be here. Like I said, we're going to try to do this weekly, but we won't be here next week because I'm going to be on a retreat and Dan's going to be hanging out in Maine doing whatever he wants to do with his son. So tonight, though, we're going to talk about tarot in recovery, right? So how many folks here have used tarot in their recovery journey? Yeah. um, I love this, and I've been using. I mean, I've used tarot since I was 16, but very specifically, almost daily polls since I've been in recovery. I think it was like 3 months into recovery, I made the decision to start polling. Um, I'm just curious. You raised your hand as well, Dan. Like, how's it helped you? Like, how does it help you? Kind of navigate recovery or your journey or your, you know.
I always seem to find what that meaning is. Well, not always, but what that meaning is in whatever the card is in terms of recovery. Um, it helps keep me focused on it when we pull every day. Um, I get to see what I need to work on, and it usually stands out pretty clearly when I research the card a little bit. And yeah, and we always pull a shadow card too, and that's always very helpful too.
I would agree. I've done a handful of different polls throughout, the last 5.5 years, and we're gonna have to get you a new chair.
Try and be still. It's very difficult for me.
I know. I've done a couple, but the one that I've probably been doing the longest is the one that we do, which is, pulling three cards, and I pull like what's in the light. So what's very obvious, that, is kind of present in my day, that I need to know that is I'm more aware of. What's in the shadow, what's something that's a bit more repressed, or I'm not willing to really admit or deal with or wanting to be involved with. And then I do a wild, and that wild is often associated based upon the day I kind of apply it to both cards, right? And think about from even an astrological perspective. Like for instance, today on a Monday, what card, I don't remember what my wild card was this morning that I pulled. I know I wrote it down, but I don't remember. But how does that relate to the fact that it's Monday, moon day? I also look at Pluto as far as today goes. And so it helps, I agree, like kind of anchor into the day of what should I be aware of? What should I be conscious of? What do I need to watch out for? And I do journal these, right? I journal them and write them every time I pull. So I get to watch my patterning of them as well. So it's this both a current day perspective, but it is also this reflection of what kind of energetic I may have been in over the course of maybe the last week or two for me.
It's a nice start to the day too, to kind of check in with yourself and get myself in that frame of mind of taking care of myself.
Yeah, it is one of the rituals that I have anchored, as far as my recovery. And when I'm not pulling cards, um, which, not gonna lie, I realized since the beginning of May, I'd only had a handful. And that was a real eye opener for me recently to say, like, wow, has the energetic in the last month and a half been tough,
Yeah.
right? Tough, to have seen that. It's yeah, it's just and I'm sure some people might journal in the same regards, the same way. Um, I'm curious, do you have any memories, Dan, of like a card pull that like did shift things or change things, or have you look at things differently?
Yeah, I have one that when we first met, I actually got a reading from you, and we did it right here actually, and you pulled the Ten of Swords and told me that I was um, suffering, but I was making myself suffer, and that one really stood out.
Mm, I'm glad you remember that because I don't.
Yeah, we do a lot of readings. It was
Yeah, I've done a lot of readings for
it
people.
was like 10 swords in the heart because it was so true.
Yeah. I I think about, recently, I think I'd even shared this with you. There was about a week span where I had the tower show up 3 times, and for that, for those of you that are listening that maybe aren't as familiar with tarot, the tower is an indication of something having to be destroyed in order for something else to be rebuilt in its place. And it can be very overwhelming for some people when they do pull it, right? Because that sounds scary. Like, what do I have to destroy, in order to replace something, to build something else? And what if I loved what I have to destroy? And so I watched this show up, and it was this sign and this indication to me to not resist whatever changes were coming my way, to lean into them, to even encourage them to see, if we could move them through, rather than allowing them to linger or become stagnant. Uh, and so, I do think it helped. I had, my niece had been living with me and she decided to move out. And on one side of the coin, I could have resisted that and tried to convince her, you don't have to, don't like save your money, so on and so forth. But that card was assigned to move it through, allow it to burn, so to speak, allow that transition to happen, and in order to have it happen, something else will come to the other side. That's much better serving. Um, hmm. I'm curious on this one, but because I told you I wrote down a couple of questions. Do you see this tarot? Is it like a mirror? Is it a messenger? Is it a predictor? Like, does it matter? Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, it's I see I see it sometimes as a mirror, but sometimes as most of the time as a messenger, and kind of an arrow pointing to what I need to pay attention to. Like it shows up, I'm like, oh wow, I see what that one is. And sometimes it's pointing out something obvious that I'm not paying attention to.
Um, yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly with that. The other thing that I have found, and I think some of this is just my own makeup and how energetically I connect to people. I will find that it shows up almost as a mirror of other people sometimes, like the other energetic that's around me, and what I have to be conscious and cautious of. Um, but yeah, it's and I don't know what your thoughts are, because I've talked with a lot of people about this. Like, do you find it challenging to read your own cards? Do you find it like challenging? Is there like,
Not not really, not after doing it for a long time and getting to know what the cards are, and I still use a reference book. Um, Sometimes helps point me in the right direction, but I think it'd be easier for me to read cards for myself than for someone else because it's such a like of all those hidden symbols and meanings in each card, I can usually like that's what that is today. That's you know
Mm,
that's my um, like when I pull the Emperor, it's generally something to do with my children and fatherhood. Um, yeah, I can usually hone in on what it is for myself. I would find it much easier for myself than for reading for someone else.
mm. You haven't read for a lot of other
No,
people,
I
have you?
haven't.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever have actually.
Maybe I should have you pull mine. That'd
Yeah.
be interesting. I talk to a lot of witches. I talk to a lot of psychics. I've talked to a lot of tarot readers, and it's very common that they will say they're more comfortable reading for another person because they feel like they can be biased, right? Biased of themselves. They can read what they want to read out of the card. And, I think that can be true in some regards, but you talked about using the reference book. And so I love to pair it up with, another form of divination, which is bibliomancy, right? Literally taking the book and reading to see what sticks out. I'll get a like somatic hit. I'll read something in the definition or the description or something of that nature, and I'm like, oh, that's what that is.
Yeah, that's exactly myself too.
Yeah, that's what that's about. And I I will tell you, like, it is very rare. I mean, even like right now, some of the experiences of I didn't get to do it this weekend, but before we leave on our trip, I want to make sure that I spend some time pulling cards because I will look at and use these cards to help me gain a perspective of whatever is kind of going on in my life. So this, niece moving out, this situation around, kind of my brother and that relationship, which there's a text right now from him that you're going to be shocked by. Um, Plus this trip coming up and like all of the stuff with the work and like what you and I are working on and stuff, right? There's a lot of these things that feel like they're energetically up kind of in the air. And so I will absolutely use cards in order to just get an energetic check in around them, because the reality is in recovery, especially the 12-step program, they say it's just one day at a time. So you only need to worry about this one day, which is a beautiful sentiment and it keeps you in the present moment. But if you're trying to accomplish things in life, manifest things in life, you often need some kind of plan around it, right? You need to say, what do I need to do? What do I need to be focused on? What do I need to stop? What do I need to shift and change and to pivot? And that to me is where the cards become really beautiful and a great companion to a recovery journey.
If only there was a deck specifically designed for recovery. Mhm.
Well,
Maybe someone should take care of that.
yeah, maybe they should. Have you ever pulled a card that was something that you didn't want to deal with?
All the time. Yeah. Sometimes I'll stick the card back in the deck and pick something different. I don't feel like seeing that ruin card
Oh God.
come up. I'd see because
What was that pull that I had?
Sometimes I do that and pull another one, but I'm always in my mind. I'm like, you can't hide from that. I still take that as my card,
Yeah.
even though I don't want to deal with it. I still will consider that my card. But
I think I had like a couple of weeks ago, like what, like ruin, defeat, and sorrow.
yeah,
Oh yeah, like three really, really tough cards.
those for me are the three ugliest cards in the deck.
Yeah, sorrow I don't mind. I
Even
actually
more than the more than the tower or hangman.
Oh yeah, I mean those swords represent, this mental despair.
Suffering.
It's yeah,
Yeah.
it's this torture that we do to ourselves. And when we're in recovery, I think we do it very often. And so what a slap in the face it is to have that card turn up and like validate that you got to get out of your damn head,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I can't always look at it. Sometimes I recognize it and I don't see it as unwritten, not written yet. I see it as um, I don't know how to say what I'm trying to say. Like you can turn it around. It's like showing you so you can turn it around for the day.
Mhm.
And sometimes I don't always see it that way, but sometimes I do too.
It is and I think that's one of the reasons why I don't mind the sorrow card is because sometimes sorrow is something that is worth being in, right? Witnessing just like sorrow in order to like, but yeah, the cruelty and the ruin and defeat, very, very challenging cards. Uh, and they are. I think, the next question is what cards tend to show up when you're in emotional distress? These are the cards, the Five of Swords, the Nine of Swords, the Ten of Swords, right? They very often, the Hangman can even show up,
Yeah.
right? When you're in distress.
My
Um,
hardest one is cruelty
yeah,
because it's a
self-inflicted.
self-inflicted, and sometimes it's hard to recognize that. And
Yeah, the other
you
one
have
is
to.
what shows up when you're close to a relapse, and that one is always the Seven of Cups for me.
The botch.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It shows up often with clients as well when they are in a state of overindulgence and justifying it, justifying it.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Um, which one's like the best? Which ones do you love to see?
I love to see the Ace of Wands
Mm,
because for me it's in the Knight of Wands also. I see it as this like
big dick energy.
creative, yeah, like a creative fire is how I see it. It's like let's go create something in this overflowing like creativity and passion. I love to see those. Um, Ace of Cups too
Yeah.
is very makes me warm inside when I see it. It's overflowing emotion and um, what else?
The
The
sun.
sun. The sun's a great one. Yeah,
Hmm.
sun.
Yeah, that one to me is like pure joy. It's just this unbelievable, joy, wonderment, awe, that feeling, the Two of Cups, that love,
Yeah, love,
connection. Um,
pleasure.
I really love the Hierophant as well.
Hmm.
It's this maturity, this lesson, this wisdom that it reflects. Um,
The universe or the world is always a nice validation
mm,
too. It
mhm.
makes me feel like it won.
um, how would you say that using tarot has, how does it connect you to your higher power or your higher self?
I see the higher self as that messenger that's like pointing those. Like when I pull that card and that thought, like, oh, that's what that is. I see that as actually the higher self is using the laser pointer to that concept for me and kind of pointing it out. That's how I see it.
I I believe, a lot of forms of divination, the tools that we use, right? So this can be pendulums, this can be tarot cards, oracle cards, this could be, ruins, any of these tools, the bibliomancy, the shufflemancy. these tools to me are, as you're saying, this like megaphone, so to speak, between the higher self. Like it's a method to, in essence, channel that divine higher self, sentiment, message, teaching, wisdom, when we might not be as in attune to it just from a natural psychic ability perspective.
Right. Like it's strange sometimes because that, like when you see that and you know that's what it is, like that's in the back of your mind, but you needed those cards to, or your higher self to point it out for you.
Well, it becomes like a validation,
Yeah.
like,
Sometimes I don't even think of it though. I'm just getting dragged through my day, and when I do that, it's like, oh, okay, slow down a little bit and think about that. And
I it it truly is this, window in some ways. I don't even know about mirror, but this window into something else. And you know, I've, as I said, I've been using tarot since I was 16, but this regular practice, incorporating it directly into my recovery, this insight, these warnings sometimes, like, are you torturing yourself? What are you doing to yourself? Like, um, and I just don't know that, I don't know that I would have that sense of, reflection or introspection without it, you know?
definitely not. It's a definite insight that most days I probably wouldn't think about it as things as clearly without pulling those cards.
Um, have you ever used them to like set intentions? Like, have you ever used them beyond just like a reading?
Um, no, I don't believe I have.
Uh, you paint with them though.
I do paint with them. I was going to say that I have a deck that I just use for painting. It's it's just the colors. It's by Ithil Calhoun, who was a lady that was in the Golden Dawn and created this. It's called Tarot, Taro, and it's a beautiful deck, and it's I use it for color and emotion, and mostly for color when I'm painting. And I also use, whatever the suit is.
Mm.
I consider that too, but yeah. So I guess I do in that way.
I'm trying to think, like, I've used it. I have a couple that sit on certain altars. I do use kind of the archetypal, piece of them. I'll often have them show up to me. Like, I might not even have a card, just because I've been pulling and using tarot for so long. Like, if I'm sitting with a client from, doing a reading or something of that nature, even if I'm just out, I can have a card just show up because I know it has some type of meaning associated to it on a regular basis. So it does. They've become ingrained in my life and in my recovery journey in a way that I never would have imagined, over 5.5
Mhm.
years ago. But I'm incredibly grateful for it.
Yeah, me too. And you turned me on to using them in that way. So I appreciate that too.
Yeah, no, I'm delighted to.
It's always fascinating to sit down in the morning and pull them. It's always I'm not always ready to hear the message, but it's always very fascinating what comes out.
Yeah. One of the questions that we've talked a little bit is, how do you handle getting a confusing or a negative card? And it's spot on. It's like we don't always want to hear. It's like having that best friend that's willing to like tell you how it is, and you're just like, really, I just wanted to enjoy today.
Yeah, exactly right.
I did not want to have to confront this.
Yeah,
Uh,
Which on those days, sometimes I won't even pull cards.
Yeah, I mean, I usually won't if I'm sick. If
Yeah.
I'm under the weather or sick, I won't pull cards. That's
Mm,
usually the
mm,
only time, or if I'm traveling, because if I'm traveling, there's usually such an influx of energy as is. I'm
mm.
like not in my normal groove that I have like concerns that I'm not going to be able to like put in what I'm learning, because you're in one place in one moment and in another place potentially an hour later. And so it can be a little harder. I like to be a bit more grounded and rooted where I am if I'm going to pull and use them. Um, you have a favorite card?
Um, I have a few that I love to see. The Ace of Wands is, like I said, is one. I love the Fool.
Mm.
I love to see the Fool come up. The Lovers, similar, that connection to higher self, and that I love that.
Here's maybe another way to look at it. If you were to go grab a new deck, what's the one card you'd kind of judge that deck by?
Maybe the Fool.
Yeah. The death card for me, seeing and understanding how they interpret
Yeah,
death, right? Do they look scary? Are they going down that route, or are they truly embracing its meaning of transformation? Um, yeah, that's been a big one for me, seeing that in the
I
deck.
have a connection with that card that for not transformation that I don't love to see it, because it reminds me of it. Um, when my father was hit by a car, and the night of, I pulled a card on what would be the outcome, and it was death. And at the moment, I thought of it as he's going to transform, and I guess he did in a way, but he died uh, a couple months later. So I was um, saw that as a more of a on the nose reading of that card. So
Yeah, well, death comes with grief, and that can be sad, but you're correct that even when somebody passes, it's a transformation. It's just not the one that we hope to see very soon.
yeah,
Yeah. You'd mentioned, yeah, like it would be really cool if somebody kind of created a deck that was focused. And not gonna lie, we said that a little facetiously. Is that the right word? Am I using that word correctly?
yeah, so tongue in
We
cheek.
Yeah, tongue in cheek. We just might have something up our sleeves. And so tarot does play a really huge role in both of our recovery journeys. And we're coming to find out that there are a lot of folks that are out there. And so what a beautiful gift to the world, uh, than to try to help provide something that can help folks navigate their recovery. So, I'll just say stay tuned for that because there's definitely more to come. Anything else you can think of, Dan, to talk about tarot and recovery?
Mm. Just highly recommended as a way to keep your to analyze your thoughts every day. It's a nice. It gives me some structure to work with, um, and points out things that I wouldn't uh, always want to face,
Hmm.
which is very beneficial for recovery.
Yeah, I share the same sentiment. If you've never tried it, maybe don't feel like you have to go out and buy a deck, or maybe go find somebody that can pull some cards from you, find somebody that and just see if it feels right, see if you're drawn to it. And if you are drawn to it or thinking about it, I'm just going to share this sentiment. You do not have to have a deck gifted to you. If you want to believe that, go ahead, ask somebody to gift you a deck. But you can go into any store and just go to what you're drawn towards, right? I will give you a caveat here that sometimes there are some of these decks that are going to go off the beaten path as to how they do their cards. For example, I have an herb crafters deck. It's all about herbs. They changed the way that they actually call the suits. I've got a voodoo tarot deck. They changed what they call the suits. They changed what they call the major arcana. So it can be a little bit challenging to use those. Uh, but
Unless you have a lot of practice with
yeah,
that deck.
yeah. Um, but uh, most decks are going to follow a Rider Waite um, style. And so just go to what you're drawn towards and don't give up if something seems confusing, strange, or odd. Maybe even go try a different deck. Because sometimes, and I've had this happen to me many of times, a deck may not resonate with me when I buy it, but a year or 2 years will pass and then I can't let it go. So cool.
Yeah, I love the highly recommend the Thoth deck, the Aleister Crowley one.
Yeah.
I just find that there's so much emotion in the paintings, uh, especially for some of those darker cards, where it almost makes you feel like, oh, ouch, when you look at the colors, and that I haven't really felt in a lot of other decks. I feel those cards a lot more in that deck. Um, yeah, like I said, that cruelty card is just like, oh, you can feel those swords sticking into you, when you
Hmm.
see it. Um, that's my favorite one, and I have some other ones that I like to mess around with, but that one is strikes the hardest with me. I like it.
Well, folks, I think you should go out and grab a deck or go grab the deck that you've got that you've never picked up in a while and give it a try. Let us know how it goes.
It's a fascinating thing to research too.
Mm,
There's so much to it. There's so much to it.
that is a true statement. Lots of books, lots of great books. Maybe we'll have to go find some of them, drop them in the comments. I'll try to remember to do that.
Yeah.
So, well, all right, dear friends. I hope that you give it a shot, or let us know, if you have and if you like it. And until next time, we're just going to say, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, ding, bell. I don't know. Just do it all because we're going to be back again. And until next time, dear friends, have a very beautiful rest of your week, day, month, whatever. And we'll talk to you again very soon. Take care, folks.
Bye, everybody.